Hey guys, good Monday morning. At least I think it's Monday. Had a couple other questions on the 9-6 homework, so hopefully you guys are continuing to work on that. I've worked out some examples. Check Classroom for those. If there's any others that are confusing you, again, don't hesitate to shoot me a message, and I'll be more than happy to look at that with you. So the one that I had a couple questions on was number 30. This is on the 9-6 homework, so let's work through that together. So I've got that um, up here. So let's work through this. So again, the first thing I think I want to do is distribute. All right, that 4 through. And again, you can change these to plus and negative if you want. But if I distribute that 4 through, that gives me 12y squared. And then 4 times negative 7y is plus negative 28y. And then 4 times 4 is 16. And it still equals 1. Okay. Now I got to get it equal to 0. All right. Again, my goal is to use this 0 product property. So the first part of that is 0. So I got to get this thing equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. So that gives me 12y squared plus negative 28y plus 15 equals 0. And so now I start, looking at, I've got it equal to 0. So the next thing I want to do is factor this thing. All right. Now, again, if you watch one of my earlier videos, we got some pretty large numbers here. It'd be nice if I could divide them all by the same thing. But with 12 and negative 28 and 15, I can't think of anything that goes into all those. All right. 4 goes into these two, but it doesn't go into 15. All right, 3 will divide evenly into that, but it won't divide evenly into negative 28. So unfortunately, we've just got to work with these large numbers. If they all could be divided by the same number, all right, I can, since I've got a 0 over here, 0 can be divided by anything. I could go ahead and divide that entire equation by that common factor, but again, there isn't one here, so we just have to deal with it. All right. So the first thing I want to do is multiply 12 by 15, and if I do that, I'm going to get some ridiculously large number. Oh, not too bad, 180. All right. So I am looking for factors of 180 that add up to negative 28. Now, a couple things I notice. It's a positive 180, so that means both of these signs have to be the same. And if I want them to add up to negative 28, they both have to be negative. All right, so I'm looking for two numbers that add together to give me 28 or negative 28. I can always change that sign. So if I start, thinking of factors of 180, and again, the first thing I do is I do the square root. I mentioned this in some of my other, some of the other problems that I've done. I don't want to do 180 and 1. I don't want to do 2 and 90. I want to, maybe start in the middle. So the first thing I always do, especially when I'm dealing with these large numbers, is I find the square root of 180, and that at least gives me a starting point. And I'm having some issues finding the square root of 180. All right, it's about 13. All right, 13.4. So that's where I'm going to start. So I'm just going to start doing 180 divided by 13, and that doesn't go in evenly. I'm going to start working my way down. 180 divided by 12. All right, 12 and 15. That adds up to negative 20, negative 27. Not negative 28 like we want it to, but we're close. So if I do 180 divided by 11, that doesn't go in evenly. If I do 180 divided by 10, I get 18. 10 and 18. All right, there we are. All right, so those are the two numbers that we need. All right, so 10 and 18. Or in this case, since it's negative 28, it'd be negative 10 and negative 18. All right. So now I want to, again, start working this thing backwards. So I want to uncombine like terms here. So that'll be 12y squared plus negative 10y plus negative 18y, make sure I get my negative in there, plus 15 equals 0. All right. I want to group these two, and I want to group these two and start factoring them individually. So 12y squared and negative 10y. Let's see, 12 and negative 10. I think the greatest common factor I can take out of there is 2. And I've got a y squared and a y, so I can factor out a y. So there I can factor out 2y. And 2y times what gives me 12y squared? That'd be 6y. And 2y times what would give me negative 10y? That would be negative 5. So I get 2y times the quantity 6y minus 5 or 6y plus negative 5. Over here, negative 18y and 15. Greatest common factor, they're both divisible by 3, all right? But kind of cheating looking ahead, I know I want a positive 6y here, and so I'm going to factor out a negative 3 instead of a positive 3 because I know I want these groups to match up. So I think, yeah, I can take out a negative 3, and negative 3 times what would give me negative 18y. There's my 6y that I wanted. And negative 3 times what would give me 15. There's my negative 5 that I wanted. So now I see my like group. So I can factor out a 6y minus 5. And what I'm left with is 2y minus 3. And it still equals 0. Now I'm ready to use the zero product property. I'm multiplying two things together and getting 0. So either one of these equations has to be 0, has to be true. Either 6y minus 5 has to be 0, or 2y minus 3 has to be 0. And now I'm just solving my screen a little bit so you can see the rest of this. I'm just solving two-step equations. All right. So I add 5 here. And so I get 6y equals 5, and then divide by 6, and I'm just going to leave that 5/6. You could change that to a decimal, but I think it's a repeating decimal, so anytime you leave it as a fraction, just go ahead and leave it as a fraction. And then here, I'm going to add 3 to both sides, so I get 2y equals 3, and then I'm going to divide by 2. So I get two solutions here, 5/6 or 3/2. And if you wanted to change that to 1.5, I mean, that'd be fine. But again, we can leave that, in this case, we can leave it as an improper fraction. All right. So again, both of those values should make that original, all the way back up here, should make that original equation true. Okay. So distributing, then getting it equal to 0, and then going ahead and factoring from there and using our zero product property. All right. So this was number 30 on 9/6. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if you guys have any other questions. Talk to you later. Take care.